Now, just before we get stuck into the lighting, which is really the meat and potatoes of this whole tutorial, I don't want to ignore the fact that without a camera, well, why would we be lighting anyway? So I want to talk you through this setup here and why I've chosen it for the purpose of this tutorial. It's always very difficult to know which camera to use in a tutorial like this. So I've gone with the BlackMagic Cinema Camera, and the reason I've done that is simple. I can shoot 10-bit ProRes in video mode, which is going to give me a color space that will not be too far off if you're shooting DSLR or traditional video cameras. I also don't want to mess around too much with picture profiles, so that what you're going to see is what you're going to get. That way we can really demonstrate what you can do with lighting, knowing that there's an awful lot more you can do in post-production. So let's look at this setup here. Let's start at the front. The first thing I've got on here is a matte box. Now, I don't use a matte box on every job, but in a studio situation like this, I tend to have one on. The matte box is really a very significant part of your lighting package because it filters light going through the lens using glass filters. Now, glass camera filters can be very, very useful in certain circumstances, and I really do regard these as part of your lighting kit. They fit into the matte box. The second function of the matte box is to control spill and flare. Any light hitting the lens from an odd angle can cause uncontrolled flare and spill. Now, I'm a big fan of flare in some circumstances, but if you want to control it, your French flag here and the sides of your matte box will help to control that. I'm using a compact prime here. Now, I'm not suggesting you have to go out and invest in these kind of tools, but a lot of the jobs I do are very high quality, high production value jobs for clients who are paying, frankly, quite a lot of money. So I like to invest in the best tools. I've got a follow focus here. I've got a rod support system here from Zacuto, and on top of the camera, I've got what I regard to be a very important piece of gear, which is my video monitor. Now, the BlackMagic Cinema Camera doesn't have a great screen on the back of the camera, and there's no way of really measuring exposure. So I use this video monitor from Marshall with a waveform monitor, and I've got audio level meters on there as well. So really important referencing equipment, and again, an essential part of my lighting kit is my monitor, because then what I'm seeing is what I'm getting. At the back here, I've got a really cool plate from a company called Bebob, which is a German company. This is a V-Lock battery plate with 4 Hyros or Hirose outputs and a D-tap output. So what this is allowing me to do is completely power my camera, my monitor, and if I wanted to add any other accessories, I could power from one source. You don't need all of this gear, but this is my studio package setup. I can strip this down and use much less, but I want to show you my biggest setup. Another very important tool in my filmmaking is this. It's the Kessler 18-inch slider. It's the Kessler S.C.A.L.E, and this I have on my tripod at all times. I find this is a really useful tool in just creating nice little moves when I'm out shooting. Doesn't directly have any impact on lighting, but it does add to production value. And when you're shooting and for looking for high production value, you want to have these little tools. On here we've got this lovely O'Connor 1030 tripod. Now again, I do a lot of high-end work, and so I invest in the highest end tools. And this brings me to a really interesting point about investing in tools. I had someone recently ask me, oh, what's the best lighting kit to buy, Den? I've got $800. And then in the same breath was saying, I want to buy a second camera. I've got a 7D, shall I buy a 5D Mark III? And my advice to her and to you would be, okay, don't buy a more expensive camera. If you have a 7D, for example, from Canon, buy a 60D or a 550D or a Rebel T2i as your second camera, and take the extra money you would have spent and spend it on a good tripod, a good monitor, and good quality lighting. If you invest in tools for the duration of your career, this tripod will not need to be replaced. This slider will not need to be replaced. My monitor, I may not need to replace it for 5 years. By investing in good quality tools up front, you're investing in your career and the success of your business. And if you don't run it for a business, then fine, you know, you buy whatever you can afford or what you want to buy. But I use this wonderful tripod head because it gives me absolutely rock solid stability in all circumstances. Now, if I'm traveling, I'll travel with a more lightweight tripod, but in this environment, when I'm working in a studio, I'll always have the biggest, heaviest duty gear. The heavier duty tripod gives me absolute stability when filming, and that's what really matters, is fluidity of movement. That's what counts. Now, of course, this is all about lighting, so I don't want to kind of go on too much about this setup, but it's suffice to say, the better quality support tools you have, the easier it becomes for you to light your scenes well. Let's now get on to the nitty-gritty of what lighting package I carry as my core lighting kit.